Hi, this is the Pharaoh of the 42nd Dynasty here, back with another video, and today I am doing the Unknown Warrior, or more specifically the British Unknown Warrior, and his tomb. Okay, so backstory, nobody knows who the Unknown Warrior is. His tomb is this one here. You can feel free to pause the video if you want it. Now, he was buried on the 11th of November 1920 in Westminster Abbey in London. You can still visit his tomb. It is the only grave in Westminster Abbey you were not allowed to walk on. And he was also buried simultaneously with another unknown warrior in France. Now, and the idea of a tomb for the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior was conceived in 1916, I'm quoting from Wikipedia here, by the Reverend Richard Railton, who, while serving as an army chaplain on the Western Front, had seen a grave marked by a rough cross, which bore a pencil-written legend, an unknown British soldier. In fact, there are several graves like this throughout the country, and throughout not only this country, although not many actually in this country, but in cemetery battlefields in France and Belgium, there are a lot of tombs which just reads "The Soldier of the Great War, known unto gods," was from Rudyard Kipling, who lost his own son. Anyway, Dr. David, the Reverend David Railton actually wrote to the Dean of Westminster at the time, in 1920, proposing that an unidentified British soldier from the battlefields in France be buried with due ceremony in Westminster Abbey amongst the kings, quote, to represent the many hundreds of thousands of Empire dead. The idea was strongly supported by the Dean and the Prime Minister, David Lloyd George. This is just some backstory now about the Unknown Warrior. And what happened was that there were 4 bodies which were chosen. They were chosen from 4 different battlefields. So nobody knows from which battlefields, nobody knows which battlefield the Unknown Warrior came from, but these 4 unidentified bodies were exhumed from their original graves, placed into plain wooden coffins covered with Union flags. 3 people then went to visit these 4 coffins, which were held in a chapel, or the chapel at Saint Paul de Tournois, near Arras in France. This was on the 7th of November 1920. Now, these bodies were received by the Reverend George Kendall, OBE, Brigadier L. J. Wyatt, and Lieutenant Colonel E.A.S. Gell of the Directorate of Graves Commission and Inquiries. And all 3 of them went into the chapel alone. The Brigadier placed his hands on one of the coffins with his eyes closed, and that body became the Unknown Warrior, which we know. It then stood in the chapel overnight, laying in repose, as we say, while the other 3 bodies were taken away to be reburied. The afternoon of November the 8th, it was transferred under guard, escorted by Kendall, with troops lining the route from St. Paul to the medieval castle within the ancient citadel at Boulogne. For the occasion, the library castle was transformed into a chapelle ardente. A company from the French 8th Infantry Regiment, recently awarded the Legion d'Honneur en masse, stood vigil overnight. And then the following morning, undertakers came from England and placed the beer coffin, into another casket, which can actually be seen here. In fact, the day before, it was lying sort of. That's an empty coffin, by the way, where the cursor is. And I know this because the date at the bottom says that it's on the 7th of November 1920. Thanks to the Imperial War Museum for putting this photo online, because this is really interesting. This is the empty coffin on display, let's just say, in Westminster Abbey. And it was then taken to France the following day, or the day after that, and the unknown warrior's coffin was placed inside. And the timbers used for the coffin were from Hampton Court Palace. It was made out of oak, and it was banded with iron. The sword which you see on it is a medieval Crusaders sword from the Royal Collection, which was chosen by King George V himself. And the iron shield on top is the inscription: "A British warrior who fell in the Great War 1914 to 1918 for king and country." So there you go. It was placed on a French military wagon for the funeral seen here, and it was drawn by 4 black horses. You can just see the back of one there. And at 10:30 in the morning, all the church bells as Bologna tolled. The mass trumpets of the French cavalry and the bugles of the French infantry played Au Chant, which is the French last post. Then the mile-long procession, led by 1,000 local school children and escorted by a division of French troops, made its way to the harbour. The coffin was placed on the destroyer HMS Verdun, and it was piped towards with the Admiral's Call, which is very famous, and I think it was only ever used for kings before. You can hear it in Mary Poppins and things like that, if you don't know what it is, or you can find it on YouTube after you've watched this. Anyway, it set sail, and it was accompanied by 6 battleships. And when it reached Dover, a 19-gun Field Marshal's salute was fired from Dover Castle, and the coffin was unloaded at the Dover Marine Railway Station. And this is on the 10th of November, by the way. It was then taken to London in a South Eastern and Clapham Railway General Utility van with number 132. There you go. Which has previously carried the bodies of Edith Cavell, nurse, and James Bryant, who was a mariner executed in 1915. The van has actually been preserved by the Kent and East Sussex Railway and is known as the Cavell van, and inside it there is a replica of the coffin of the unknown warrior. Anyway, it reached London Victoria on platform 8 at 8:32 p.m. and it remained there overnight. The following morning, it was placed onto a gun carriage and drawn by 6 horses through immense and silent crowds. As the cortege set off, a further Field Marshal's salute was fired in Hyde Park. The route followed was Hyde Park Corner, the Mall, and to Whitehall, where the cenotaph, a symbolic empty tomb, was unveiled by King Emperor George V. The cortege was then followed by the King, the royal family, and ministers of state to Westminster Abbey, where the casket was borne into the west nave of the abbey, flanked by a guard of honour of 100 recipients of the Victoria Cross. There were also 100 women there, and each one of them has lost both their husbands and their sons during the war. Anyway, he was buried with full military honours, and of course, as we've just said, he was given a state funeral. I believe the Americans also chips in with some sort of honour later on, but it was then capped with a black Belgian marble stone, and it features the inscription which you see in the top left there, and it was composed by Herbert Edward Ryle, the Dean of Westminster. And the brass which is engraved in it is actually melted down from wartime ammunition. So there you go. You can't really see it, but around the edges are 4 quotes from the New Testament. The Lord knoweth them that are his, which is from second book of Timothy, chapter 2, verse 19. Unknown and yet well known, dying and behold we live, which is 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. Greater love hath no man than this, from John chapter 15, verse 13. And in Christ shall we all be made alive, which is from the first book of Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 22. The Medal of Honor was given by the United States in 1921. Another thing which is worth noting is that all royal brides have placed their bouquets on the tomb. This is actually a tradition and was started by Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who later became the Queen and then much later on, the Queen Mother. And she married her husband in 1923, so she was 23 years old at the time, at the most. And the reason why she laid her bouquet on the tomb is because it was in memory of her brother Fergus, who died at the Battle of Lewes in 1915. And he was actually listed among the missing, so it could have been Fergus. Anyway, it isn't Fergus because in 2012 a headstone for him was actually erected in France. The latest bride to put her bouquet on the tomb as of time of recording was Princess Eugenie, and her bouquet was of course laid on the tomb. I think Meghan Markle's was as well, and Kate Middleton's, but take those with a pinch of salt. Anyway, in fact, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, before she died in 2002, at the record age of 101, she expressed the wish for her wreath to be placed on the tomb of the unknown warrior. And her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II, laid the wreath the day after the funeral. And there are, of course, several other tombs of the unknown warrior, but including one for the American Vietnam War, which is actually empty because the remains were identified through DNA testing. So there is no tomb. So there is no unknown warrior in the tomb of the Vietnam War unknown warrior, which is interesting, I have to say. But one thing I want to say is the unknown warrior was at the time of recording. It's going to be the 11th of November 2018 tomorrow, and that means it's 100 years since the end of the First World War, which was regarded as a time of celebration, but not anymore. It was celebrating, of course, the end of the war and our victory over the Germans, but now it's considered a time of reflection and a time for remembering those who fell in order to try and make the world a better place. In fact, the Unknown Warrior locomotive, which is seen down here in its latest stage, this was taken on Friday the 9th. It has had a new plaque revealed, and it is in memory of the fallen. The plaque was unveiled on Saturday, the 10th of November 2018, and I think it's a fitting tribute to those who fell. The Royal British Legion are actually trying to remember every soldier who died during the war, and you're very welcome to go and find their website and put your loved one's name down. You can leave a short message if you wish, but I'm sure that everyone in Britain at least has lost some family member in the war. My family certainly has, vaguely, but we all know of a family member who died during the war, and it's quite sad, really, because at the end of the day it was just a waste of time, but this was definitely one of the worst wars in human history, and the reason why we remember it is to try and not make it happen again. Mainly, people wear poppies as a sign of remembrance because poppies grew in the fields after the war because poppies loved disturbed grounds, and so poppies started appearing. That's why the poppy is a symbol of remembrance. But people have been wearing white poppies, which are a sign of peace. Also, purple poppies, which remember the animals which fought during the war and died during the war. And then there's also black poppies to remember the Africans and the Caribbeans and the African Americans and so on who died during the war as well. Lest we forget. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos, and I should be back next week back on schedule with more Egyptian videos or ancient history videos, and I shall see you very soon. Thank you very much.